The Atlantic stretched out like a sheet of black glass, reflecting the moon's pale glow. A gentle breeze rustled across the surface, barely disturbing the stillness of the night. The salty air hung heavy, pregnant with the promise of rain. A lone ship, the Albatross, cut through the water, her sails billowing softly. The Albatross was a sturdy vessel, her seasoned timbers creaking gently with each rise and fall on the waves. She had weathered many storms, her prow slicing through the water with an almost defiant grace. Tonight, however, an uneasy silence hung over her deck, a sense of foreboding clinging to the very air they breathed. From somewhere far off, a sound drifted across the water, faint at first, barely audible above the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. It was a song, haunting and strangely alluring. It grew steadily, weaving its way into the minds of the men on deck. The notes were high and sweet, filled with a mournful beauty that sent shivers down the spine. The crew of the Albatross, hardened sailors though they were, stirred uneasily. The song seemed to seep into their very bones, whispering promises of unimaginable delights. It spoke of warm embraces, of oblivion from the hardships of the sea, of a paradise where desires flowed as freely as the ocean currents. One by one, the sailors succumbed to the Sirens' call. Their eyes glazed over, losing their focus on the familiar world around them. The pull of the song was too strong, the lure of its promises too tempting to resist. They drifted towards the railing, their movements becoming erratic, their faces slack with longing. The song wrapped around their senses, drowning out the familiar sounds of the ship, the creak of timber, the snap of the sails. It was a siren's song, as old as the sea itself and just as deadly. The sailors were mere puppets, their strings being pulled by an unseen force. Captain Elias stood apart, his weathered face set in a grim line. The sea had carved its story into his skin, each wrinkle a testament to battles fought and storms weathered. His eyes, sharp and piercing, scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the impending danger. The crew looked to him for guidance, their trust in him unwavering despite the eerie calm that had settled over the ship. He jammed his hands into his pockets, his knuckles white as he fought against the insidious allure of the song. The melody was haunting, a siren's call that promised both ecstasy and doom. It was a sound that could drive a man to madness, and Elias could feel its tendrils wrapping around his mind, trying to pull him under. But he resisted, drawing on every ounce of his willpower. He knew what it was, the danger it represented. This was no ordinary song. It was the call of the deep, a lure that had claimed many sailors before him. The legends spoke of ships dashed upon the rocks, their crews lost to the depths, all because they couldn't resist the siren's call. Elias had always thought them to be just that, legends. But now, faced with the reality, he understood the truth. He'd heard the tales whispered in hushed tones in taverns in every port he'd ever visited. Old sailors, their faces lined with age and experience, spoke of the song with a mixture of fear and reverence. They told of comrades lost, of ships that vanished without a trace. Elias had listened, half believing, half dismissing their stories as the ramblings of men too long at sea. But now those tales came rushing back, each one a warning he wished he had heeded more closely. Elias watched his crew, his heart sinking as he saw the light of reason fade from their eyes, replaced by a vacant yearning. They were succumbing to the song, their minds no longer their own. He could see it in their slackened jaws, their glazed-over eyes. They were being drawn in one by one, and he knew that if he didn't act soon, they would be lost to him forever. He knew he had to act fast, had to break the spell before it was too late. There was no time to lose. The ship's bell, a symbol of hope and a call to action, was his only chance. He had to snap them out of their trance, to remind them of who they were and what was at stake. With a determined stride, he moved towards the bell, his mind racing with the urgency of the moment. He grabbed the ship's bell and began to clang it, the sound harsh and jarring in the stillness of the night. Each ring was a desperate plea, a call to his crew to wake up, to fight against the pull of the song. The noise cut through the air, a stark contrast to the haunting melody that had ensnared them. Elias rang the bell with all his might, hoping against hope that it would be enough to break the spell and bring his men back to him. Section 5. A ship in the mist. As if summoned by the siren's song and the captain's desperate clanging, a shape began to coalesce from the swirling mist on the horizon. It was a ship, but unlike any Elias had ever seen before. Its sails were tattered and torn, resembling giant bat wings against the moonlit sky. The hull was black and skeletal, as though the sea itself had aged it prematurely. An unnatural chill settled over the albatross as the ghostly vessel drew closer. Its silence was more menacing than any cannonade. This was the stuff of nightmares, a phantom ship whispered to haunt these waters since time immemorial, the Flying Dutchman. The spectral ship, seemingly drawn by the siren's call, turned its spectral bow towards the source of the haunting melody. The Dutchman, caught in an eternal rage, sought to silence the song that echoed his own endless torment. Cannons materialized on its deck, glowing with an eerie green light as they swiveled, aiming at the rocky outcrop where the sirens were perched. A deafening roar shattered the night as the spectral cannons fired, the sound like the anguished cry of a tormented soul. The sea itself seemed to recoil from the unholy barrage. Waves crashed against the rocky outcrop, momentarily obscuring the sirens from view in a maelstrom of foam and spray. The chaos provided Elias with a desperate opportunity. The storm raged on, waves crashing against the hull, and the ship groaned under the strain. The crew was in disarray, their minds clouded by the siren's song, but Elias saw a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. He barked orders, his voice hoarse but firm, finally cutting through the siren's enchantment. "To your posts!" he shouted, his words slicing through the air like a knife. The crew hesitated, their eyes glazed, but the captain's determination was unwavering. His men, jolted back to their senses by the Dutchman's ghostly volley, stumbled back to their posts. The ship was under attack, and the crew had no time to waste. Cannon fire lit up the night, and the smell of gunpowder filled the air. With a heavy heart, Elias made a decision. He knew that the only way to save his crew was to make a sacrifice. The weight of his choice bore down on him, but he steeled himself for what had to be done. He rushed below deck and returned with a chest. It was an old, weathered chest, its wood darkened by years at sea. Inside it held the ship's most valuable treasure, a collection of gold coins and jewels. It was filled with gold, payment for safe passage, an offering to appease the vengeful spirits of the deep. The gold glinted in the dim light, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded them. Heaving the heavy chest, he cast it overboard. The chest tumbled through the air, its contents clinking together before it hit the water with a resounding splash. The gold hit the water with a splash, vanishing into the inky depths. The crew watched in silence, their fate now tied to the whims of the ocean. It was a desperate gamble, a sailor's superstition to appease the ocean's wrath. Elias hoped that the offering would be enough to calm the storm and save his crew from certain doom. Turn their attention by his gruesome time. The supernatural forces that plagued them seemed to waver, their focus shifting. The crew seized the moment, working together to steer the ship to safety. The storm began to subside, and a sense of hope filled the air. As if accepting the offering, the spectral ship turned away from the sirens. The Dutchman, its ghostly cannons falling silent, sailed on, fading back into the mist from which it had emerged. The siren's song, abruptly cut off, left an eerie silence in its wake. The crew of the Albatross watched, their faces pale and drawn as the mist swallowed the Dutchman whole. Elias, his heart pounding in his chest, steered them away from the siren's lair. The moon, now shrouded in a veil of thin cloud, cast an unsettling pallor over the ocean. The wind picked up, whistling through the rigging, a mournful sound that echoed the terror that lingered in the hearts of his crew. They sailed through the rest of the night in tense silence, the weight of their recent encounter pressing heavily on their minds. The darkness seemed to stretch endlessly, each minute feeling like an hour as they navigated the treacherous waters. Every creak of the ship a reminder of its age and the countless voyages it had endured. Every splash of water against the hull a testament to the relentless sea sent shivers down their spines. The crew, usually a hardy bunch, now found themselves gripped by an unshakable fear. The memory of the ghostly ship, its spectral form cutting through the fog, the lure of the siren's song, so hauntingly beautiful yet deadly, it was all still too vivid, too real. The sailors' haunted expressions told the story of their ordeal, too raw. As dawn broke, the first light of day began to pierce the darkness, painting the sky with hues of rose and gold, a stark contrast to the night's terror. A weary relief washed over them. They had survived the night, but the ordeal had left them exhausted, both physically and mentally. They had survived the night. The crew exchanged relieved glances, some even managing weak smiles, but the relief was short-lived. But a sense of foreboding lingered. The fog that had enveloped them during the night still clung to the horizon, a reminder of the dangers that lurked just out of sight. The curse of the Flying Dutchman, a tale as old as the sea itself. The haunting melody of the Sirens, their songs echoing in the minds of the sailors. It was a chilling reminder of the unseen forces that governed the sea. As they sailed on, the sun climbing higher in the sky, its warmth doing little to dispel the cold fear that had settled in their hearts, they couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter was not over. The unease was palpable, each sailor casting wary glances over their shoulders. The curse, they feared, was far from broken. The shadow of the ghost ship seemed to follow them, a dark omen on the horizon. It had merely been delayed. The sailors knew that their journey was far from over, and the true test of their courage was yet to come.